Joining me now, Liberal MP Keith Wolahan. Keith, thank you so much for your time. Not the way they would have wanted to finish up the week in Parliament.
Thank you, Erin, and happy Easter to you and your viewers. It was just chaotic, and it was chaotic throughout this whole process, the first two tranches of urgent legislation. And then the way we in the House were given an hour's notice to vote on something, we took it on good faith and face value that it was urgent, but wanted the Senate to interrogate whether that was indeed true. And as the thread was pulled from the department officials, they couldn't make the case that it was urgent. So we should never do legislation on the fly like this.
Do you, this might be a silly question, do you trust the Labor government to keep us safe?
Well, we need them. We need to trust them to keep us safe because that's the primary duty of government. But we have all of these institutions and structures so that we don't just trust blindly like that. That's why the Senate is such an important house of review. It's in our constitution for that deliberate reason. We don't have the numbers in the House. Of course, it's going to sail through the House, but the Senate is where this work is done. And I'm really pleased we're now going to have that proper inquiry because there are often unintended consequences from rushed legislation like this. And we need to hear from experts and community representatives about that.
Do you know yet what you want changed in it, what you want added, taken out? What's the thoughts of the coalition?
The thoughts is the process. We want to hear from experts, particularly legal experts. Migration law is not easy. No one pretends that it is. And it's one of the reasons we've got this tussle between the executive branch of government and the judicial branch of government. That's why separation of powers is a key concept that the High Court will decide on. But in order to find that right balance between the two, we need to make sure it's constitutionally sound, but it's also fair and keeps us safe. And I don't think that balance has been struck on any measure. So we need to hear from experts and community representatives about that.
One of the biggest stories of today, and it is a good news story, China has announced it will drop the crippling tariffs on Australian wine. The government is using this as a big win for them. And as I said, it's a good news story. But I feel like in some ways we're forgetting the fact that when China did this, it was horrific, undeserved, unfair and hurt so many people very, very much that we shouldn't suddenly be so grateful to the wonderful Chinese Communist Party for reversing it.
Trade is important, and trade is a win-win for everyone, not just for areas like in my home state of Victoria, the Yarra Valley or the Mornington Peninsula or other wine regions, including in South Australia and other areas. It's also important for the consumers. So the consumers in China who want quality Australian wine, they lost out too. And there should be processes to this. And I would have liked to have seen this continue to a hearing so that we would have had proper confirmation that this wasn't started by Australia. It wasn't Australia's fault. It was an arbitrary, capricious decision, and it should never have happened.
In pretty humiliating news today for the South Australian government, less than 10% of eligible voters cast their ballot for the state's historic First Nations Voice to Parliament election. So out of an estimated 27,500 Indigenous people on the electoral roll in SA, less than 3,000 turned out to vote. What does that say to you, Keith?
It says the governments need to listen to the electorate, that there is goodwill and good faith throughout Australia to improve the lives of Indigenous Australians. Everyone wants that. Every reasonable person wants that. There are exceptions, of course. But I think when you look back to the Voice referendum we had nationally, a clear message was sent from Australians that that sort of divisive institution is not the way to go about it. So I'm surprised that the South Australian government is pressing on. And when you look at the no vote, it was particularly high in South Australia. I think the South Australian government needs to listen to their own people.
That's exactly right. Before we go, I'd like to listen to you with an Easter message that you'd like to share with my viewers.
My message would be to give blood and give plasma. On Tuesday night, I had the great but very sad honour of speaking to a friend of mine, a veteran from Afghanistan whose 5-year-old daughter died of leukemia. But she was bought extra time and extra Christmas because of the generosity of Australians who gave blood and plasma. 1 in 3 Australians will need blood, but only 1 in 30 will donate. So please make an appointment with Lifeblood Australia and give blood and plasma.
Yeah, that's a tough one to hear, Keith. Thank you. It's very important. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.